This is Amber Albee Swenson. The Sidonian widow and the Shunammite woman could not have been more different. The widow was in desperately poor circumstances, down to her very last meal, whereas the Shunammite was well-to-do. The widow already had a son. The Shunammite had not been able to. The widow had to be commanded to give, while the Shunammite gave generously. Despite them having such different circumstances, their situations ended up being quite similar. Both brought profits into their home. Both saw their only son die, and then saw their only son brought back to life again. It's good that God recorded these two situations for us, so that we could see, as we look through our churches and schools, that God will use people of different talents, abilities, and even degrees of willingness for the good of His kingdom. The Apostle Paul urges us to give cheerfully and generously. You know, the temptation is to think, well, the Shunammite had all kinds of money, so of course it was easy for her to give. And yet, God was gracious enough to record the account of the widow who gave her last few coins as Jesus looked on, so that we could see the amount that we possess shouldn't be the factor. Attitudes matter. First of all, because God's looking at the heart. And we see in the account of Cain that God isn't really all that happy when we give out of obligation or we give just enough to get by. But attitudes also matter because they're contagious. A few years ago, I was hired as an elderly companion, and when I took the job, I was told no matter what else was going on in my life, it was imperative that I came to work happy, because the man I was taking care of who had dementia would mirror my emotions. As we go through our lives, others are going to be watching. I've been Sunday school superintendent now for 8 years, and I no longer look just for a body to fill a position. As I look for Sunday school teachers, I look for people who are passionate about the Word, because as we're passionate about the Word, we're going to help the children to become excited about the Word too. Elijah was a man in desperate situations at a desperate time, and God brought him to an equally desperate widow. And then He provided for them all. As we see God providing for us and working things out in our lives, it's imperative that we share what my friend Mike Westendorf calls the stories of God's faithfulness to others. First of all, it's because it's our act of worship. But then secondly, because we encourage others to also watch for God to be carrying them through too. God bless you as you study the Sidonian widow and the Shunammite woman.